The great chamber of Concordia Prime floated in the darkness between stars. A massive ring of metal and light that had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic history, and the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the spiral. Armelena Vasquez stood in the center of the circular floor. Her simple blue suit stark against the elaborate robes and environmental suits of the 47 species that surrounded her in tiered seats, rising up like an amphitheater. Carved from starlight itself, she had practiced this moment for 3 years, had memorized every cultural gesture and every diplomatic phrase in 17 different languages, had studied the voting patterns of each council member, and knew exactly how this would end. Vethra Prime Adjudicator raised 3 of its crystalline appendages, and the chamber fell silent with a susurration like wind through broken glass. The council recognizes the human petition for full membership status, the adjudicator said. Its voice translated through quantum resonance into something Elena's ears could process, a sound behind her. The holographic display showed Earth in brilliant blue and green, rotating slowly while data streams cascaded around it like digital rain, showing 30 years of human cooperation with council protocols, 30 years of following every rule, of accepting every inspection, of sharing technology that had taken humanity centuries to develop, of proving again and again that the violent species from Sol 3 had changed the human species, has completed the probationary period, continued the adjudicator. And Elena felt her heart beat faster despite knowing what came next. She had read the preliminary counts, had seen the private communications her intelligence people had intercepted, had watched the elder species make their backroom deals. The Chromoth Empire delegate rose on its 6 segmented legs, each one thicker than Elena's entire body, its chitinous armor reflecting the chamber. Lights and oil-slick rainbows we have reviewed. The human record, ostensibly, the Chromoth ambassador, announced in a voice like grinding stones. We have seen their technological progress and their apparent commitment to peaceful coexistence, it continued. And Elena noticed the word apparent hung in the air like a knife, however, and there it was. We cannot ignore their history of violence, their wars among themselves, their destruction of their own planet's ecosystem before achieving spaceflight, and their concerning rate of military development even during this probationary period. The Silent Choir's representative, a floating cluster of bioluminescent jellyfish-like beings suspended in a sphere of their home ocean, pulsed in agreement with colors that translated to support for the Chromoth position. Elena had expected this and more, had known that showing humanity's military strength was a double-edged sword that cut both ways. They wanted humanity weak and dependent, wanted to keep the aggressive newcomers contained in their single star system where they couldn't threaten the established order. Vote began with the traditional call from the oldest species present, the ancients of Vord, who had been traveling the stars when Earth's sun was still forming from cosmic dust, against said the Vord representative, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic bottle. One by one, the votes came in with mechanical inevitability. Against from the Chromoth Empire, against from the Vethra Collective, against from the Silent Choir and the Methane Breathers and the Hive Minds of Secta. 7 for species abstained. Minor powers who relied on human trade and didn't want to take sides. Not a single vote in favor. The final tally appeared in holographic numbers above Elena's head. 43 against. For abstentions, 0 in favor, but the council wasn't finished with their humiliation. The Vethra adjudicator spoke again, reading from a document that had clearly been prepared well in advance of this theatrical vote. Furthermore, the council has determined that human expansion beyond the Sol system represents a potential threat to galactic stability and peace. All human colonies and other star systems must be abandoned and their populations returned too. Sol within 2 standard years. Elena's jaw clenched, but her face remained calm. Additionally, the resources of the Sol system are hereby declared galactic commons, and extraction rights will be auctioned to council members in accordance with standard protocols. They were going to strip mine humanity's home system and sell the rights to the highest bidder. Human vessels will be restricted to sublight travel outside the Sol heliopause, and all human military vessels must be decommissioned under council's supervision. They were building a cage and locking humanity inside, The adjudicator finally turned its crystalline gaze directly on Alina. "Does the human representative have any statement before this session concludes?" Alina looked around the chamber slowly, meeting the eyes or equivalents of each delegate. Memorizing faces and species, and the particular quality of their contempt, she thought about the speech she had prepared for if this moment came. The impassioned plea for reconsideration. The logical arguments about mutual benefit and shared destiny instead. She asked a single question: "Are you certain?" The adjudicator's crystals chimed in what its species used as laughter. The vote is complete and binding under council charter. It said with finality, "We are quite certain." Alina nodded once, gathered her data tablet, and walked toward the exit with measured steps that echoed in the sudden silence. The delegates watched her go, many already discussing the division of sol systems, asteroid belts, and the valuable deposits on Europa, and Titan. The Chromath ambassador leaned toward its nearest ally. "The primates accept their place at last," it rumbled with satisfaction, but the Vethra, who sat nearest the exit, a junior observer whose role was simply to record the proceedings for the archives, noticed something. The others. Miss Delena Vasquez was smiling, not the diplomatic smile she had worn throughout the session, but something smaller and more genuine, the smile of someone who had just confirmed a long-held suspicion. The observer made a note in its crystalline memory matrix, a tiny detail that would seem significant only in retrospect. Within 6 hours, every human in council space received the same encrypted message. 3 words that had been prepared years ago for exactly this contingency: "Come home now." The recall had begun, and the council had no idea what they had just set in motion. By mistaking humanity's patience for weakness and their cooperation for surrender, they had made their choice, cast their votes, had shown humanity exactly where they stood now. Humanity would show them what that choice actually cost the galaxy was about to learn. Lesson that species far older and supposedly wiser had somehow never learned themselves. That the most dangerous thing you can do to humans is not to defeat them in battle or even to kill them outright. It is to underestimate them. The withdrawal happened so smoothly that the council didn't understand it was an act of defiance until far too late. Within the first week, every human diplomat submitted formal departure notices and began packing their offices in the embassies, scattered across 300 Council World students at the prestigious Academy of Galactic Sciences on Vethra. Prime withdrew from their programs mid-semester, leaving research projects half-finished and professors scrambling to find replacements for their most talented pupils. Human merchants closed their shops and trading posts, selling inventory at steep discounts or simply giving it away to bewildered customers who couldn't understand the sudden urgency. The council watched this exodus with satisfaction at first, seeing it as confirmation that humanity recognized its subordinate position and was complying with the restrictions. But then the engineers started leaving Dursera. Chen had spent 12 years maintaining the quantum resonance network that powered the jump gates in Sector 9, a network that connected 47 star systems and handled 60% of the commercial traffic in that region. She left her post with 2 weeks' notice, training her Chromoth replacement on the basic maintenance procedures, but somehow forgetting to mention the cascade failure protocols or the quarterly calibration sequences. 3 months after she departed, the first jump gate flickered and went dark. Within 6 months, all 47 gates in Sector 9 had failed, and ships that normally made the journey in hours were now facing months of conventional travel. Similar patterns emerged across council space. The medical teams withdrew from the plague hospitals on Verath 7, where they had been working for 15 years on a cure for the genetic disorder that killed 3% of every Verath. Generous James Morrison tried to explain the treatment protocols to his replacements, but the therapy required understanding human genetic techniques that took years to master. 6 months after the human medical staff departed, the Verath plague returned with a virulence not seen in 2 decades. The methane breathers discovered that the atmospheric processors keeping their colony domes habitable on oxygen-rich worlds had been designed by a human corporation called Atmotech Solutions. When the processors started breaking down in Atmotechs, human engineers were no longer available for repairs. The methane breathers realized the spare parts were all custom designed and the schematics were protected by encryption they couldn't break. They had to evacuate 17 colonies at enormous cost. The trade disruption hit next and hit hard. Humanity had quietly become the galaxy's logistics experts. Their A's optimizing shipping routes and cargo distributions in ways that saved the Council trillions in fuel and time when those eyes shut down simultaneously. Trade routes that had been refined over decades suddenly became inefficient. Mesoships arrived at stations to find their expected cargo hadn't been loaded, or discovered that the market for their goods had shifted 3 systems away, or burned twice as much fuel, taking routes that avoided gravitational hazards. The human A's had navigated with ease. The Chromath Empire's military made a more alarming discovery during a routine training exercise. Fleet Commander Zarth ordered his flagship to acquire targeting locks on a series of drone targets. The targeting system, which had been working flawlessly for 8 years, displayed a simple message: license expired. Contact Terra Defense Systems for renewal. Every ship in the Chromoth fleet used targeting software licensed from Terra Defense, a human company that had undercut the previous Vethra supplier by 40% when Zarth tried to contact Terra Defense. He found their offices empty and their communication channels dead. 3,000 warships, the backbone of Council military power, were effectively disarmed until new targeting systems could be installed. The Council sent its first envoy to Earth 6 months after the withdrawal. Begana Bastard Khalith of the Silent Choir arrived at Mars Station with a delegation of 20, expecting to find a humanity chastened and ready to negotiate a return to Council space under better terms. Instead, they found a humanity that politely heard their proposals, offered them excellent hospitality, and then explained that they were welcome to stay on Earth or Mars as private citizens, but would not be returning to Council space. As diplomatic representatives, we appreciate the offer, Elena Vasquez told Keleth over dinner at the diplomatic residence in Geneva, but Earth has concluded that Council membership is not in our interest. Surely we can find terms that are mutually acceptable. Keleth pulsed in colors that translated to reasonable compromise. Elena smiled, the same smile she had worn leaving the Council chamber. The Council made its position clear. She said quietly, "We simply accept that position and are acting accordingly." But the disruptions, Keleth protested. The gate failures and the medical crises and the trade problems, those are unfortunate, Elena agreed. But they are consequences of the Council's decision to restrict human presence in Council space. We complied with your restrictions. Keleth realized then that every system failure, every technical problem, every crisis was legally defensible. Humans had left their posts after giving notice, had attempted to train replacements, and had simply gone home as ordered. That none of the systems worked without them was not humanity's problem to solve. Keleth stayed on Earth and never returned to Council space, sending only a brief message to the Council. We underestimated them. More envoys came in the following months, and most made the same choice Keleth had. They met humans who were friendly and welcoming but absolutely unwilling to return to a galaxy that had rejected them. The Council began to fracture as species realized the elder races had doomed them all for the sake of pride. Severeth openly blamed the Chromoth for pushing the anti-human. Both the Chromoth blamed the Vethra for not anticipating the technical dependencies minor species started ignoring Council directives and sending their own representatives to Earth, begging for individual treaties. 2 years after the vote, a Vethra science vessel on a routine survey mission detected something that made its instruments scream warnings. The outer reaches of Sol's Oort cloud, where comets drifted in the darkness, massive structures floated in perfect geometric formations. The science vessel moved closer, scanning with increasing disbelief. Shipyards the size of moons, refineries processing asteroids into raw materials, construction facilities, building vessels of designs the Vethra had never seen, all of it hidden in the vast emptiness beyond the planets, beyond where anyone would think to look, and all of it decades old based on the wear patterns and the radiation signatures. The Vethra captain sent an urgent message back to the collective. Humanity was never waiting for our approval. They were buying time. Every human civilian ship that had visited Council space had been gathering intelligence. Every colony had been a cover for hidden manufacturing. Every cultural exchange had been an intelligence operation. Every cooperative gesture had been a strategic delay, while humanity built something vast and a secret in the darkness of their home system. The Council had been so focused on keeping humanity weak that they never considered humanity might have been pretending to be weak when a Council fleet arrived at Sol to demand explanations. They found the system defended by weapons that made their shields flicker and fail before a shot was even fired. Admiral James Chen, newly promoted to command of Earth's home defense fleet, transmitted a message to the Council fleet commander. "You are in violation of Sol system sovereignty," he said calmly. "Withdraw immediately, or we will consider this an act of war." The Council commander, a veteran Chromoth warrior who had fought in a dozen campaigns, looked at his sensor readings and saw things that should not be possible. Human ships moving at accelerations that would crush any organic crew. Energy weapons operating on principles his science officer couldn't identify. Defensive fields that seemed to manipulate space itself. "How long?" the commander asked simply. "How long have you had this?" Chen smiled. "Longer than you've been alive," he answered. "We hoped we wouldn't need it. Hoped that the galaxy was ready for genuine partners instead of subjects and masters. That hope died with the vote. The Council fleet withdrew without firing a single shot. Their weapons already offline from an electromagnetic field they couldn't even detect the source of back on Concordia Prime. The Council convened an emergency session to confront a reality. They had refused to see. Humanity had never needed their permission for anything. The galaxy's newest species was also its most dangerous, and the Council had just made them an enemy. The human expansion began quietly, like seeds dispersed on a stellar wind. So gradual that the Council didn't recognize it as an invasion until the maps had already been redrawn within 1 year of the Council. Fleet's humiliating retreat from Sol. Human colony ships appeared in unclaimed systems along the galactic rim. Systems the Council had surveyed and dismissed as marginal at best. These weren't the slow generation ships the Council expected from a species supposedly restricted to sublight travel. These were fast movers using some kind of drive technology that bent the rules of physics in ways that made Vethra scientists question their understanding of reality itself. The first colony, New Havana, appeared in the Kepler 442 system almost overnight. 1 month the system was empty except for automated mining drones, and the next month a fully functional colony of 30,000 humans was broadcasting greetings to neighboring systems and offering trade agreements. Council sent observers who reported back in confusion. The colony had infrastructure that should have taken decades to build. Orbital platforms, ground-based cities, agricultural domes, and defensive installations that made the observers' military escorts very nervous. "How did you construct all this so quickly?" the lead observer, a methodical Chromoth engineer, asked the colony governor, Governor Patricia. Okonkwo smiled, that distinctly human smile that Council members were learning to dread. "We've gotten very efficient at colony establishment," she said. "Turns out when you're not spending all your time filling out Council paperwork and waiting for permits, you can accomplish quite a lot." The observer filed a report noting that every answer the humans gave was technically truthful, while revealing absolutely nothing useful more. Colonies appeared in rapid succession: New Shanghai in Ross, 128 Nova Kiev in Tau Setinu Lagos in Proxima. Centauri's secondary system within 2 years. Humanity had established 47 colonies in systems the Council had ignored, creating a network of settlements that formed a rough sphere around Sol at a radius of 50 light-years. But these weren't isolated outposts. Struggling to survive, each colony was a technological and industrial powerhouse, manufacturing goods and developing innovations at a pace that shocked the Council's economic analysts. Human ships moved between these colonies with casual ease, their drives leaving energy signatures that Vethra sensors could detect but not explain. Trade flourished among the human worlds, and soon extended to nearby non-Council species, who were eager for human technology and didn't care about Council prohibitions. Council's intelligence services worked frantically to understand how humanity had achieved such rapid expansion. The answer, when it came, was humbling. Every civilian ship that had operated in Council space for 30 years had been a dual-purpose vessel. Capable of rapid conversion to colony transport or military use, every human who had worked in Council facilities had been gathering intelligence and technical knowledge, learning the galaxy's secrets while appearing to be humble students, and junior staff. Every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to assess other species' strengths and weaknesses. Every treaty negotiation had been a chance to understand Council decision-making and identify fracture points. Humanity had spent 3 decades pretending to be weak while building an infrastructure in secret that could support rapid expansion the moment they were free of Council oversight. The military situation deteriorated even faster than the political one. A pirate fleet operating near the human colonies made the mistake of attacking a human merchant convoy. Expecting easy prey, the convoy's escort, a single human frigate called the Defiant, engaged the entire pirate fleet of 23 ships. Battle lasted for minutes. When Council naval observers arrived to investigate the distress calls, they found 23 pirate vessels floating dead in space. Their systems fried by weapons. The observers couldn't identify the Defiant was gone. Having continued on its patrol route, as if nothing significant had happened, Chromoth Empire's High Command reviewed the sensor data with growing alarm. Human frigate had moved faster than anything in the Council fleet, had shields that absorbed energy weapons fire without apparent strain, and had destroyed 23 ships using some kind of directed energy weapon that operated at a frequency Council ships couldn't defend against. If one frigate can do this, the High Commander said slowly, what can their fleet do? Nobody wanted to answer that question. Species that had voted against Earth's membership began sending quiet diplomatic inquiries to New Earth, the human diplomatic colony established in neutral space. They wanted bilateral treaties, technology exchanges, mutual defense pacts, anything to ensure they weren't on the wrong side of humanity's expansion. The Council tried to forbid such treaties, citing charter provisions about unauthorized diplomatic relations. But 47 species simply ignored the directive. The Council had no enforcement mechanism that didn't rely on the Chromoth fleet, and the Chromoth fleet was increasingly reluctant to test itself against human military technology. The Vethra Collective faced its own crisis when 3 of their primary crystal matrix power cores began failing simultaneously. These were ancient structures, some over 10,000 years old, that provided power to entire planets. Of failures should have been impossible. But diagnostic teams discovered that the matrices had been degrading for decades, and only human maintenance had kept them. Functional Chief Engineer Sarah Chen, when contacted at her new position on Mars, confirmed what the Vethra had feared. Yes, we were maintaining your matrices. She said your own engineers didn't understand the quantum degradation patterns. So we quietly fixed the problems while pretending to be learning from you. Can you help us now? The Vethra representative asked, desperately, of course. Sarah said as soon as the Vethra Collective signs a mutual cooperation treaty with Earth, recognizing our sovereignty and our right to expand. We'll send engineering teams immediately, the Vethra signed, within a week. Becoming the first major council species to break ranks. Others followed in a cascade that the elder species couldn't stop within 3 years of the vote. The council had fractured into 3 camps: loyalists who insisted the elder species knew best, pragmatists who had signed bilateral treaties with humanity, and opportunists who saw the chaos as a chance to settle old scores. Open conflict broke out when the methane breathers, angry over the colony evacuations they blamed on the council, attacked a Chromoth supply depot. The Chromoth retaliated by blockading methane breather homeworld's human weapons, sold quietly through intermediaries, started appearing on both sides of the conflict. The council had kept the galaxy peaceful for 10,000 years. Through a combination of respect for elder species, wisdom and fear of the Chromoth military, now neither respect nor fear was sufficient. Species that had been nursing grievances for centuries saw their chance, the silent choir, discovered that several of their colony worlds had declared independence and were applying for human protection. Ancients of Vord found their mining operations sabotaged by species using human-designed explosives. The galaxy was coming apart, and the Council's authority evaporated like water in vacuum in a desperate session on Concordia Prime. The remaining Council loyalists debated their options. We must eliminate the threat at its source. The Chromoth High Commander declared one strike at Earth itself, and the human expansion collapses. You saw what happened to our fleet, a Vethra elder protested. They turned us away without firing a shot. Because we retreated, the commander countered a full assault with overwhelming force could succeed. The discussion turned to weapons that had been forbidden for thousands of years. Tools of mass destruction that the Council had locked away when the galaxy had learned the cost of total war. Buried in a vault beneath Concordia Prime was a stellar destabilizer. A weapon capable of causing a star to go supernovae had been used only once 4,000 years ago. To end a war that threatened to consume the galaxy, the species that had used it had destroyed themselves in shame. Afterward now, the Council was considering using it again. Targeting Sol itself, 8 billion humans. An elder protested in all the species that have taken refuge there. All the Council members who defected, all the traitors who chose humans over the Council. The Chromoth Commander interrupted. Sometimes order requires terrible choices. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 23 in favor, 18 against. With the rest abstaining or absent, the Council had just voted to commit genocide. What they didn't know was that human intelligence had intercepted their communications. 3 days ago, Earth already knew what was coming. The war room deep beneath. Geneva was silent as Admiral James Chen studied the holographic display showing the stellar destabilizer's location beneath Concordia Prime. Around the table sat humanity's military leadership and representatives from the 32 species that had formerly allied with Earth, including several former Council members who had defected when they saw which way the galactic winds were blowing. They actually voted for it, Governor Okonkwo said quietly, her voice carrying a note of disbelief despite having seen the intelligence reports. 23 species voted to murder 8 billion people, Elena Vasquez, now Earth's Secretary General, stood at the head of the table, with her hands clasped behind her back. We have 3 options, she said, her voice steady despite the enormity of what they faced. We can evacuate Sol System and let them destroy an empty star. We can attempt to disable the weapon before they can activate it. Or we can end the Council before they end us? Evacuation would take months we don't have, Chen said, highlighting the timeline on the display, and it would mean abandoning Earth itself. Every city and monument and grave, everything humanity has built for 10,000 years. The second option, asked Ambassador Keyleth, the silent choir representative, who had defected to Earth years ago. Khan pulled up schematics of Concordia Prime that human intelligence had been compiling for decades. We have assets in place, he said, sleeper agents who've been positioned since before the vote, maintenance workers and low-level staff that the Council never bothered to vet properly because they were just humans. They can access the vault. Elena asked. They can access anything on that station. Chen confirmed. We've had complete building plans and security protocols for 15 years. The display shifted to show a complex 3-dimensional map of Concordia. Prime's internal structure. Red dots marked the positions of 43 human agents embedded in various positions throughout the massive station. Our people can reach the vault, disable the weapon, and extract before the Council realizes what's happened. Chen continued, but it would expose our entire intelligence network. Burn assets we've spent decades positioning. The third option, Governor Okonkwo asked, though her tone suggested. She already knew the answer. Chan's expression hardened. We demonstrate to the Council and every watching species exactly what happens when you threaten humanity with extinction, he said. We mobilize the fleet, jump directly to Concordia Prime, and demand immediate surrender of the Council leadership. That's an act of war against 43 species. Someone objected. They voted for genocide. Chen shot back. They declared war when they activated that weapon. Authorization. Alina held up a hand for silence. There's a fourth option, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. We let them activate the weapon, she continued, and we show the galaxy what the Council really is. The room erupted in protests, but Alina spoke over them. We can disable the destabilizer remotely before it does any real damage, she explained. Our people already have access to its control systems. That's how we know about the activation vote in the first place. She pulled up a new display showing broadcast networks spanning the galaxy, but instead of quietly stopping them, we let the Council believe the weapon is functioning, and we broadcast their attempt at genocide to every inhabited world. Simultaneously, you want to use this as a propaganda victory? Keleth pulsed in surprise. I want to use this as the truth. Alina corrected. The Council just voted to commit mass murder because humanity refused to submit to their authority. Because species are choosing us over them, because their grip on power is slipping. Let every civilization in the galaxy see exactly what the Council does when their authority is questioned. Chen studied the plan with a military strategist's eye. It's risky, he said, if something goes wrong with the sabotage. If our people can't disable it in time, then we evacuate. Alina finished. We have contingencies. We have time to get people out if the primary plan fails. But if it works, she interrupted. We destroy the Council's moral authority forever. We do it using their own actions against them. The debate lasted 3 hours, with military leaders arguing for the direct assault option and diplomats favoring the exposure strategy. In the end, Elena's plan won by a narrow margin. Over the next 2 weeks, human agents on Concordia Prime worked with quiet efficiency. A maintenance technician named David Park, who had spent 8 years fixing environmental systems in the lower levels, accessed the vault's security network and planted monitoring devices. A janitor named Maria Santos, who the Council guards barely noticed as she cleaned their offices, delivered a compact fusion battery to a storage room 3 levels above the Vaultan.
Administrative assistant named Kenji Yamamoto,
who filed paperwork and scheduled meetings for Council bureaucrats, compiled access codes and security rotations. None of them knew the full plan. Only their small part in it. That was how human intelligence had always worked. Compartmentalized cells that couldn't compromise the whole operation. If discovered on the day the Council scheduled the weapon's activation, human ships positioned themselves in orbit around hundreds of worlds. They carried no weapons, no military personnel, just broadcasting equipment powerful enough to punch through any jamming at Concordia Prime. The Council leadership gathered in the vault chamber with ceremonial gravity. The Chromath High Commander placed his primary manipulator on the activation interface for the stability of the galaxy and the preservation of Council authority, he intoned. We do this terrible thing. The stellar destabilizer hummed to life, its ancient technology focusing exotic particles toward a target 300 light-years away. Sensors showed the beam forming, the weapon charging, the sequence progressing exactly as designed on Earth. Alarms should have been screaming instead. Alina Vasquez sat in her office drinking tea while watching the countdown 30 seconds to beam release. Chen reported from the Military Command Center. All broadcast stations are ready. Confirm the weapon is fully disabled. Alina asked. Calmly confirmed, said a voice from Concordia Prime. David Park, speaking through an encrypted channel. The destabilizer is firing exotic particles into empty space and feeding false readings to the Council's sensors. It couldn't destabilize a candle, let alone a star. Perfect, Alina said. Begin the broadcast across the galaxy. On every major world and every minor outpost, on ships in transit and stations in orbit. The same message interrupted regular communications. It showed the Council chamber, showed the High Commander activating the weapon, showed the Council leadership watching their displays with grim satisfaction. It showed the target, Sol, humanity's home star, and it showed the vote count, 23, species voting to murder billions. Elena's voice accompanied the broadcast. Calm and factual, the Galactic Council has just attempted to destroy Earth's sun and commit genocide against humanity and the 32 species that have allied with us. She explained this was their response to species choosing partnership over subjugation. To our refusal to accept second-class status in a galaxy we helped build, we have disabled their weapon. But we wanted every civilization to see what the Council truly is. A collection of elder species willing to commit mass murder to maintain their control. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic for the Councils of NT8. Species submitted formal withdrawal notices. Within the first day, riots broke out on Council worlds where citizens realized their governments had voted for genocide. Chromoth Empire fractured as its military commanders refused orders from a civilian leadership that had authorized such. Horror, the Vethra Collective's ruling council, was forcibly dissolved. By its own people, 3 council members committed ritual suicide, and shamed Concordia Prime itself became a symbol of everything wrong with the old order. And within a week it was abandoned as species recalled their ambassadors and staff. The Council had destroyed itself more thoroughly than any human weapon could have managed. They had shown the galaxy their true face, and the galaxy had recoiled in disgust. The galaxy had no government for 3 months, and in that vacuum of authority, something unprecedented happened. It didn't collapse into chaos. Species that had relied on the Council for 10,000 years discovered they could negotiate directly with each other, could resolve disputes through bilateral agreements, could trade and communicate and cooperate, without elder species deciding what was best for them. But everyone knew the current situation couldn't last forever. Someone had to organize. The mess of treaties and alliances had to establish some kind of structure, had to provide the framework that prevented minor disputes from escalating into wars. The question was who? And that question had only one obvious answer: Lena. Vasquez received delegations from 93 species in the first month after the Council's collapse. They came to Geneva and to New Earth and to the various human colonies, all asking variations of the same question. What comes next? Alina gave them all the same answer. That's not for humanity alone to decide. On the 100th day after the destabilizer broadcast, representatives from 112 species gathered in the Great Hall of the former Concordia Prime Station, which had been renamed Unity Station by popular consensus, stood before them not as humanity's leader, but as the convener of something new. The Council failed because it was built on the idea that age equals wisdom, that elder species should rule younger ones, that the galaxy needs guardians to protect it from itself. She began. We've all seen where that philosophy leads, to stagnation, to the suppression of new ideas, and ultimately to a council willing to commit genocide rather than share power. She gestured to the assembled representatives. A mix of former council members, newly spacefaring species, human allies, and former enemies, but we don't need to replace one hierarchy with another, she continued. We don't need humanity to become the new council, making decisions for species that can make their own choices. What we need is something that's never existed in this galaxy, a true federation where every species has a voice, where decisions are made democratically, and where contribution matters more than age or military power. The Vethra elder who had once sat on the council spoke up. Its crystalline voice: uncertain democracy on such a scale has never been attempted. It said the council managed the galaxy because someone had to make decisions quickly and efficiently. The council managed the galaxy badly, Alina replied bluntly. They made decisions quickly and efficiently for their own benefit while everyone else suffered the consequences. A democracy may be messier, may take longer to reach consensus, but at least the species affected by decisions will have a say in making them. Kelleth pulsed a question in colors that translated to practical concern. How would such a federation even function? They asked, with hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, countless competing interests. Alina smiled and pulled up a holographic display. We've been working on that. She said the display showed a proposed structure. A general assembly, where every member species had one vote regardless of size or power. A security council with rotating membership to handle urgent threats. And a court system to arbitrate disputes based on agreed-upon laws rather than the whims of elder species. It included protections for minority rights, provisions for species to maintain their own governments and cultures, and strict limits on the central authority's power. Most importantly, it included a charter that could be amended by popular vote. Nothing is permanent, except the commitment to democratic principles, Lena explained. If this system doesn't work, you can change it, but the changes have to come from you collectively, not from humanity imposing our will. Why should we trust this? The Chromath representative asked bluntly. Why should we believe humanity won't use this federation as a tool for your own dominance? Alina met the Chromath's compound eyes steadily. Because we're writing limits on our own power into the founding documents. She said humanity will have one vote in the General Assembly. Same as everyone else, we're proposing that no single species can hold more than 10% of Security Council seats. We're suggesting that the Federation's military forces be drawn proportionally from all members, with no species providing more than 15% of the total. She paused to let that sink in. We're deliberately structuring this so humanity cannot dominate it. Because a federation we control isn't a federation at all. It's just another empire wearing a democratic mask. The debate lasted for weeks. Species argued over representation formulas and voting procedures, over what powers the federation should have and what should remain with individual governments. Over military command structures and economic integration, the former council members were the hardest to convince. They had spent millennia believing that their age and experience gave them the right to rule, and accepting democratic equality felt like diminishing themselves. But the alternative was clear. Return to the old system and face the same resentments and rebellions that had destroyed the council. Or embrace something Nutha Vethra Elder, who had questioned democracy's scalability, became one of its strongest advocates. After human engineers helped restore their failing crystal matrices while asking for nothing in return except participation in the Federation discussions, humanity could have demanded concessions, could have extracted tribute, could have used our desperation to their advantage. The Elder told the Assembly instead they helped us because it was the right thing to do, because they believe in the partnership they're proposing. Perhaps that is the new wisdom the galaxy needs, not the wisdom of age, but the wisdom of mutual respect. The vote to establish the new Galactic Federation happened 6 months after the Council's collapse. 112 species voted to join. With only 7 abstentions and 2 rejections, the Chromath Empire, now split into 3 successor states, voted to join as separate entities. After a peaceful partition, the Silent Choir became the Federation's communication infrastructure. Their telepathic networks adapted to serve democratic discourse. The Vethra offered their crystal technology for Federation facilities. Humanity contributed their AI systems for coordination and their military technology for collective defense. Within a year, the Federation had grown to 147 members within 2 years. It encompassed 300 inhabited systems. The old Council's remnants, the species that had refused to join, found themselves increasingly isolated. They tried to maintain their authority in their own sectors, tried to recreate the hierarchical system they preferred. But their young people kept leaving for Federation worlds where merit mattered more than birth. 50 years after the vote that had rejected Earth's membership, Alina Vasquez stood in the Great Hall of Unity Station one last time. She was 97 years old now, her hair white and her hands marked with age spots, preparing to step down from her role as the Federation's first Secretary General. Assembly had gathered to mark the transition. Representatives from over 400 species now, with another 100 petitioning for membership. I want to tell you something I've never said publicly, Elena began, her voice still strong, despite her age. When the Council voted against Earth 50 years ago, I was furious, hurt, and more than a little bitter for a long time. I wanted revenge. She smiled slightly. We had the power to take it, had the weapons and the technology and the strategic advantage to punish every species that had voted against us. Admiral Chen wanted to show them our strength, wanted to make them regret their decision, and we could have done it. The hall was silent, every representative listening, but somewhere between leaving the council chamber and building what we have now, we realized something important. She continued, revenge would have been satisfying, but it would have made us exactly what the council feared, another aggressive species, using power to dominate others instead. We chose to prove them wrong by building something better than what they had, by showing that the violent primates from Sol 3 could create a civilization based on cooperation instead of dominance. She gestured to the assembled representatives. This federation isn't perfect. We all know that we have disputes and disagreements, and sometimes species act in their own interests instead of the collective good, but it's ours. Built by all of us together. And it's better than anything the galaxy had before. The Council's last mistake wasn't the vote against Earth, Elena said. Her voice carrying across the hall. It was assuming that humanity would respond to rejection with either submission or violence. They couldn't imagine a third option, that we would build something new and invite them to join us as equals. She paused. Looking around at the faces and forms of 100 different species, some of them eventually understood that and joined us. And some never will, and that's their choice to make. But for those of us here, we've proven that the galaxy doesn't need guardians or rulers or elder species to tell us how to live. We just need the courage to work together as equals. The applause started with the human delegation. It spread quickly through the assembly. 100 different species showing appreciation in 100 different ways. The Vethra chiming their crystals, the Chromoth clicking their mandibles, the silent choir pulsing in rainbow colors.